true crime is one of the most popular genres that is on TV and our screens right now. A new YouGov poll found that 57% of Americans watch some kind of true crime content. And in 2018, Making of a Murder was one of the most binge-watched TV shows. And the UK has 3 dedicated true crime channels which has a reach of 5 million people a month. So what actually is the obsession with true crime, and what difficulties does this then bring? So in my opinion, true crime does have its place in society, and I think first and foremost its place needs to be to inform, to educate, and especially when the victim themselves has brought their story forward, or the victims' families. There's many different reasons why people decide to watch true crime, and I think for me and for many other people, one of the main things is to try and understand the depths of the human psyche and the darkness that actually is there, and also to answer some of the big questions of why. Like, why do these people who are everyday, normal seeming people who walk this earth in society as like the rest of us, how do they do these horrible, horrendous things? And alongside that, I think it's also about the justice system and the legal system, and especially as a British person watching a lot of American true crime, I think it's interesting to see how things are done over there too. So it's not really about the horrific and horrendous details of what happened to these poor victims. I mean, for me, I don't like watching things that are too much, that have too much of those types of things, because like we're going to get on to, it's really not very nice, of course, for the victim's family to have that out there in the world. And also it ends up glorifying the killer. It ends up kind of showing more about the killer and who they were, I suppose, and what they did and the horrible things that they did, and not actually about the people who suffered as a consequence. That brings us into the issue of re-traumatizing, which when we have these types of documentaries or dramas that obviously go into the realm of entertainment, that's when true crime, it all gets a little bit murky. So for example, Robert Mast, he died as a result of being killed, and Netflix reached out to his family and his friends because they wanted them to appear in one of the series of I Am a Killer. This happened in 2019, and the family were vehemently against this being aired. They did not want it to happen at all. In fact, the article that I found, it said that the family members pleaded with the producers to abandon the project, saying that it was inhumane to sell a documentary at the emotional expense of a grieving family. Mindy Pendleton, who is the stepmother of Robert Mast, she sent multiple emails saying, you know, as a parent, please do not do this, please, like, I'm begging you. And yeah, they ignored it and aired it anyway. I think that we can all agree that this is extremely unethical. Like, it's beyond unethical to do that, and it's so clear that profit has been put over people, and you know, a juicy story has been put over actual human emotions and sensitivity that they owe to that family. Like, you are re-traumatizing them by putting this out into the world when they have begged you not to do that. And there's many instances of this happening. There's many accounts online and articles of families who have said true crime has like ruined our family. You know, it's put details out that we never wanted anyone to really, you know, have to hear. We didn't want this to be public. We didn't want, you know, our family's name to be blasted across the world, and yet just because Netflix have decided that it's a juicy story, or another company have decided that it's good, they decided to do that, which obviously, that's awful. I mean, like, that is such an awful thing to do to a family and about a story that's not even yours. Like, realistically, it's their story, and it's their story that will affect them for the rest of their lives. I mean, once these producers and these people working on this documentary or this drama, once they've stopped doing that, they're not going to be affected by it. They've done their job, but the family will, because it's their story. It's what happened to them in reality. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but there's obviously also a question of like, where is all this big profit going? Like, where is all this money going? Not to the families, that's for sure. I mean, maybe in some cases, but generally it's like, it's not going towards these people whose story it is and who suffered, to help them in some type of way, or for any of the foundations that they might have set up in the memory of their loved one. No, it's just going towards the big corporations to fuel more of these documentaries and more of these dramas and shows that are actually hindering some of these people in reality. So let's move on to the actual glorification of these killers. So I just want to make a distinguishment that there is a difference between obviously documentaries and dramas. Documentaries are, they're more factual, they're more about the truth, they're more about reality, whereas dramas, they obviously have more creative freedom and more of an ability to, change what is kind of loosely based on reality. So if it's a true story, they might say it's based on a true story. That kind of based is kind of like, it's, obviously that these aren't the real people, these are actors, that some of the lines being said probably didn't actually happen in real life. But there is an issue that when some of these programs and these shows, these dramas, when they get so big, they get confused with being truth and being full reality. Now, Monsters, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, that received nearly 2 billion streams on Netflix. It is the third most popular thing on Netflix, which is absolutely crazy. And I want to talk about the story of Rita Isbell, who is the sister of the victim, Errol Lindsay, who was a victim of Jeffrey Dahmer's. And she talks about how Netflix just put greed over people and over families in especially the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And she talks about the similarities as well, how similar it was to something that was obviously really traumatizing for her. And it was the scene when she is so upset that when she's talking to Dahmer on the stand on like the victim, talking about her victim testimony, when she's on the stand, she kind of gets so angry that she jumps towards him and shouts at him and screams, obviously, because she's overwhelmed with emotion. And she said herself like how crazy that was, because she was like, I thought that was me. She was like, that person, the actress, was so similar. Every word she said was mine, every action, her hairstyle, everything. Like, I would have thought that was me. It was so similar. And this is what she said in response to obviously what Netflix did. She said, I feel like Netflix should have asked if we mind or how we felt about making it. They didn't ask anything. They just did it. She continued, I could even understand if they gave some of the money to the victims' children. The victims have children and grandchildren. If the show benefited them in some way, it wouldn't feel so harsh and careless. It's sad that they're just making money off this tragedy. That's just greed. And I think that this is such a trend in all of these true crime content pieces, whether it's a drama or a documentary, is that you can tell that greed is often at the forefront and what is going to make the most money, what's going to make the most, views. Because let's think about it. So for me, Ted Bundy, I kind of know, I feel like I know a decent amount about Ted Bundy. I kind of even know that he drove like a beige looking Beetle, like a cream Beetle. But I can't think of like a handful of names of any of his victims. And I think probably a few of you would also feel the same, because those victims aren't put out there as much as who the actual person who did it is. And I know that there's far more of an interest in, who this person was and how they could have done this and how they did it. But the victims are literally like treated like nothing. These big companies know where the eyes are going to be. They know what people are going to want to see. And that is more of, obviously, these killers, and it's not actually the victims themselves, which is it's so hurtful, because realistically it's the victims who should be at the forefront, not this, you know, person that committed these horrendous things. It's these victims and their families, and it's their story, because they were real life people. They had horrible things happen to them, but they were real people with careers, families, friends, dreams, just like the rest of us. And we don't give them the time of day. So let's move on to the Menendez brothers. And I'm going to say first off that I did enjoy this show. I thought that the acting was just amazing from both Nicholas and Cooper, and Javier Bardem, Chloe Sevigny, if that's how you say her name. I thought it was just superb quality in terms of acting. But let's delve into some of the issues involving true crime. And I think one of the biggest things that is so talked about in anything really that Ryan Murphy has made to do with, you know, crime is, why is everyone so hot? Like, why is everyone so good looking? Yeah, so that's definitely something that is being talked about so much. So I found this article by Tara Watson, which was in Mamma Mia, and she said perfectly that the Menendez brothers are extremely sexy in the show. Like, I swear, in every second scene before they're arrested, they're either topless in the shower or pool. It's a lot. And yeah, I think watching that, I was, you know, I kind of saw that, I identified that as well. And also, I think she also talks about how in the actual picture for Netflix, that it looks like a cologne or perfume ad, or like an underwear ad, not something for a true crime drama. So yeah, I think this definitely, it's like, this one was probably, I mean, it's more so than, you know, the Dahmer series. I mean, everyone has seen that edit of Nicholas Chavez. I mean, I've seen that so many times on my For You page, and I mean, I see it as like, I see both sides. I see that it's, you know, it's fun, it's like, you know, people liking, you know, the actor, and, you know, he's kind of like the new boy of the month who everyone's obsessed with. And I do think that he's genuinely extremely talented, but I think that there's also the factor of this being, you know, he's portraying someone who has had a horrific background, and I'm going to draw a big line between the Menendez brothers and some of the other kind of true crime series and killers, like for example Dahmer. There's a big difference between Dahmer and the Menendez brothers because of the circumstances that surrounded it and some of the issues that there are there that are, you know, blatant. But still, it feels quite uncomfortable to have these kind of edits of someone who's portraying this character of someone who essentially, they did kill people at the end of the day. And similarly, there are also edits of Evan Peters as Dahmer, which I think more people were concerned about. They were a bit like, you know, don't kind of romanticize that. That's not, you know, there's so many things that Evan Peters has been in that you could maybe create an edit of, but maybe not him as Jeffrey Dahmer. And I think there's also something to be said about possibly these kind of things leaning into hybristophilia, which is like that certain interest in people who commit crimes. And there's a big underground kind of like group of, you know, young girls and young women usually who have these kind of obsessions for these, again, usually young men who've committed these atrocious crimes. I remember in particular one of those TikTok boys who, I think he ended up going to prison for dangerous driving, and he actually killed like a mother and her child from dangerous driving. And I remember that there were so many people like saying, no, he can't have done it, he's innocent because he's too good looking. Like, what? Like, that is just, it's wild. Like, haven't we learned that anyone can commit crimes? Like, anyone. It doesn't matter what they look like. I mean, again, I think the next one that Ryan Murphy is going to be doing in the Monsters series is Charlie Hunnam as Ed Gein. And yeah, again, I suppose there's some sort of likeness between all of these people, all of these actors who are portraying these perpetrators of horrific crimes, but they are kind of like yassified. Like, let's be honest, it's like them, but a lot better, like looking attractiveness wise. And I don't feel like that's maybe done not on purpose. I feel like there's some reason as to why he keeps doing that, and it's a little bit odd in my opinion. You could maybe give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe he's just doing this, or maybe there's a reason behind it, maybe because, I don't know, maybe he's saying that everyone, you know, anyone could be a killer. Like, anyone could have these tendencies. Anyone could, you know, regardless of physical looks or attractiveness. I mean, again, the example of Ted Bundy, he was considered to be extremely good looking and attractive in his day. You know, there was people at the time saying he couldn't possibly have done this because he's too intelligent and he's too attractive, you know, he's too good looking to have done this. But I think as a society, we're actually past that now. I think we know that it doesn't matter what you look like you can commit crimes. It doesn't matter at all how you look. It matters on your actions and how you think and how you feel, which determines your criminality, not your looks. However, is this the reason why Ryan Murphy has done this? Probably not. I mean, if we look at the things that he's made before, I think it's obvious that he just likes to cast good-looking people. I mean, this is Hollywood. That's what they like to do. I mean, good-looking people are everywhere. That's what sells. So obviously they're gonna bank on that. However, I think, in my opinion, that there is a big difference between something like Mindhunters, where the casting was so good, it was like they were like doppelgangers. There wasn't any kind of, you know, making them look better than they actually were. It was very similar. It was so similar, in fact. And there's a big difference between that and, you know, Zac Efron as Ted Bundy, Nicolas Chavez as Lyle Menendez. There is a difference. Even Evan Peters as Jeffrey Dahmer. It's like there's similarities, but it's them, but much, much better looking. I mean, that's kind of my opinion, I suppose, but it's something that I feel like a lot of people have been talking about and drawing upon. And I think it's definitely an issue that we need to talk more about. We need to have more open discourse around, because we need to kind of think about how is this affecting society? How is this affecting how we perhaps are sympathising with some of these people who've committed these horrible things simply because of how they look like, or simply by how they are portrayed in the media. Maybe it's just casting, but maybe there's just a little bit more to it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. True crime is just growing so much. It's grown exponentially since the pandemic, and it's not going to stop, I don't think. So whether you love it or loathe it, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!